In this video, I'm going to teach you how to do Warrior 3. This is a variation on a classic yoga pose that I'm going to make some tweaks and teach you a little bit about the form, how to prepare for it, what poses you might want to practice doing before trying Warrior 3, because it is a difficult balance pose and strength pose, and I'll explain the anatomy. Let's check it out. So Warrior 3 is a standing balance pose. Essentially, you stand on one leg, extend one leg back, and possibly extend the arms forward. That's going to be a lower body pulling exercise, if we want to think about it that way, because it uses the posterior chain of muscles, particularly the hamstrings, the glutes, the erectors, which are like your paraspinal muscles on your back. And if you have the arms overhead, we continue that line of that back line on the shoulder muscles, as well as some of the upward rotators on the back that can help to stabilize the shoulders. So we get this long line of muscles working together to achieve this rather difficult pose. So obviously it's a balancing pose, and so you should spend time practicing balancing poses first. So, you know, a simple pose like tree pose would be a good way to practice balance. And then hamstrings flexibility is required. So in order to practice hamstrings flexibility, I would recommend that you view my video on pyramid pose, because I make some modifications to your classic pyramid pose that are not typically taught in a yoga class. We have a bent knee, we're not really diving deep, we're using a nice neutral spine, and we're using it more for strength at end range rather than deep passive flexibility. And we're going to do the same thing with Warrior 3. So we are stretching our hamstrings, but then we are loading the hamstrings up using our body weight, because the entire upper body and the arms hang over the front leg in this pose. All of that weight is transmitting force into the hamstrings and glutes and paraspinals, etc., but especially the hamstrings, which are under a deep stretch. So it's important that we take this step by step. So the way that I like to get into this, there are many ways that you can get into this, but to simply feel tilting in the pelvis and direct a stretch into the hamstrings, keep that stretch, and then we'll load it up. So it's going to look like this. Essentially, we'll start on the right leg, slide the left foot back just a couple of feet, not a long stance, okay? A nice narrow stance, just enough that you can unlock the front knee just a tiny bit and tilt the pelvis forward, like you're pressing forward from your belly button, or if you had tail feathers, you'd be lifting your tail feathers up behind you. And then you're going to stick your booty back with a slightly bent knee until you feel a stretch in the hamstrings. Now you should be able to find a rather deep stretch in the hamstrings without this need to try to draw your nose towards your knee. You can do this with a neutral spine, because the stretch in the hamstrings doesn't come from the back. The stretch in the hamstrings comes from the pelvis relative to the femur, that's your thigh bone. So we send the booty back, we have a little bit of a bent knee, we find that stretch. Then we press the front foot down into the mat rather hard, and so we feel those hamstrings light up and engage. At which point we can start to just lean forward and put more and more weight into that front leg. Lean forward, the back foot becomes light. Lean forward, the back foot becomes extremely light, and then you lift it up behind you. Now, this alone might be rather difficult, and you might want to stay here and focus on your breathing. If you want more load into the hamstrings and you want to use your shoulders, you can begin to reach the shoulders forward. Okay, again, I'm not straightening the front knee. I'm not straightening the back leg even necessarily, although you could if you wanted to. The focus here is keeping a stretch in the hamstrings and keeping it under load. So that is going to allow you, the arms moving forward creates a longer lever and additional resistance that your front leg's hamstring has to do. And keep in mind, the back leg is not passive here, right? The back leg is you're squeezing your butt cheek as hard as you can to lift that leg up to the sky. So there's a lot of work to be done in this movement, in this pose, this Warrior 3 variation. And it can really help to develop your strength, endurance, and control and balance in a lengthened position. So this is a good way. This would be sort of as close as we can really get to sort of something like in weightlifting or in traditional exercise, a single leg Romanian deadlift, that type of thing. And so it's a good transition. If you are trying to get into weightlifting, well, if we start with body weight and we use poses like this, where we're harnessing the leverage, the physics of our body and creating long levers to load up our hamstrings, then we can focus on strength and use that as a bridge into maybe load-bearing exercises, which have so many benefits. If you're not into that, that's okay. This is a very good exercise on its own that you can incorporate intelligently into your yoga classes. Thanks for watching. See you next time.